My name is Jared Stern, and you're listening to Wrapped, the official podcast of the Tefillin Project, a project which gives tefillin to people who have never received a pair before. Here is where you will get to listen to the most inspiring people involved in the mitzvah of tefillin. On this episode of Wrapped, I interviewed Eli Lebowicz, a Jewish comedian who was famous for his role in J-Sketch, Jewish comedy sketches that have gone viral on the internet. During our conversation, Eli discusses how one small tweet after October 7th led to him inspiring many to start putting tefillin on.
Hi.
Welcome to Wrapped, the Tefillin Project podcast. Eli, thank you so much for joining us again. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Eli Lebowicz. I am a Jewish comedian by trade, normally, and I am originally from Chicago. I went to Yeshiva University for college. My blood type is A negative. A lot of questions. There's a lot I could give you. And I have born and raised, I guess Orthodox my whole life. And I think I don't know what other areas I could tell about myself, but this feels like an interview question that I'm just like, hey, I'm going to go on for about 3 hours and tell you every detail about me.
I hear. I guess honing in on the Jewish comedian part, how did that come about? I know most people go into college, especially for me, it's like, classic Jewish occupations, doctor, lawyer, businessman. So how did you get into being a Jewish comedian?
Well, I would say the comedian is the fourth Jewish profession. So, after when I was at YU I started in 2008. Friends of mine, Donnie Collette and Tani Gutterman, were doing this they had this thing called the Chesed Club, and they started this fundraiser for Camp Hask, which is a camp for special needs kids, and they were doing a fundraiser, and they were doing a new talent, a talent show type of thing, like a stand-up, amateur open mic thing. So that was November 2008. I did that. I didn't do very well, but then a year later they had it again, and I won it that year, and then I came in second the year after, which I should have won also, but I won the popular vote. It's fine. And then I started doing in New York City. They have these thing called bringer shows where you go to comedy clubs on an off night, and you they say, hey, you can get 5 minutes of stage time if you bring 10 to 15 friends or whatever. So I was able to do that through college and a bit after, and then I just realized that I had such an inkling to do Jewish jokes that were so kind of focused on religious life, the Orthodox life a little bit, and kind of veered toward that because it was just so much easier to write jokes about Shabbos, kosher, and davening and shul and holidays and stuff like that. And there's so much. I found that there was so much more relatable material within the Jewish community. So I was offering to do Zoom shows for a few people in Israel, and then I realized that you could get do a Zoom show, but you just have the muting problem would be an issue. Meaning everyone's muted, and you're giving a share that you have no idea how it's going, or it's too loud if everyone's unmuted. So I basically figured out that through trial and error that you have 5 or 6 people unmuted and everyone else is muted. So I was able, thank God, to pick up. I did 100 shows over Zoom during COVID, whether that over from 2020 till 2022 or whatever. And then since since the war started, there were a bunch of gigs that were kind of postponed right when things, because it was just too sad and horrifying what was happening, that people kind of were like, okay, we're going to postpone or not have it. So I've seen, since I've got back into it, performing for communities, people really need to laugh with what's going on right now. Same thing with also COVID too, especially because people were by themselves, isolated, especially older communities where these people weren't going out for months at a time, and it was just very extremely isolating. And I'm sure a lot of Jews are feeling very isolated if they're in their own communities and there isn't a big Jewish presence, or anywhere they go is just like, free Palestine and people are yelling at them, and it can be very, very scary and lonely. So I hope that my comedy, which is very much about Jewish pride and Israel pride and all these things, helps people a little bit, just in a cathartic way, to feel it's okay to be Jewish, be embarrassed, don't shy away from it, you embrace it. And again, I also have some material about like a little bit what's going on. I had I also do like sketches with these guys, Ami Kozak and Mikey Greenblatt. We have what they call J Sketch.
I
So
remember
one of the
seeing these
sketches,
sketches when a
yeah,
year ago on Instagram. I was like, I'd crack up, and like, it was relatable. Most sketches you see online are not. This is just the funniest stuff.
well, I'm kind of unofficially calling it SNL, but funny. So, but like we just had one a couple of weeks ago about, the stresses of getting ready for Shabbos. We had one. So in November, it was a whole thing like, what are we going to do about this, a sketch about this Israel situation? And we can't like touch on the war directly, but we did a sketch about, sending supplies to Israel. Every, shul sisterhood and all these like, mothers and wives are packing, rating Target for deodorant and whatever, and like we kind of, and that people, but like seeing the comments, people were like, oh, this was the first time I laughed in this, since the war. And I said, I know that a lot of people don't want to make jokes about LL because they've been doing amazing work, the last several months, but like if we can't make jokes about LL still, the terrorists win. So yeah, so that's really what I've kind of been doing. I've been seeing it's been helpful for people. I would say the same way in COVID, that like it was just a way of, and when the world the world has never felt more upside down than it has 4 years ago during COVID. But there's ways to feel normal again a little bit. But so for myself, I was posting a bunch, and I basically what I realized was that when I put on Tefillin for the first time on the Monday, I guess October 9th, was it October? Yeah, that Monday, October 9th, I put down Tefillin, and I was like, I hadn't done, since the beginning before circus, and I didn't, so I was like putting it on, and I just like posted something saying like, if you haven't put on Tefillin, I'm putting on Tefillin for the first time in a week or so. It's a good time as I'm restarting putting on Tefillin. It's also a good time to restart putting on Tefillin if you haven't done it in a while. If your Tefillin are a little bit, I call it quote unquote dusty. So for people that, for whatever reason, they weren't doing it every day or haven't done it in a while. And then I posted that, and then I said something like hashtag not Chabad, but we need as many mitzvot as we can get. Because I really felt this like sense of everyone's just like at a loss for words of like what we can do. There's only so many things that you can do to help. You can send money, you can, send supplies, but there's not like what's an actionable thing I can do in my own home or at a shul, ideally. But I'll be realistic. That you can do. So then I posted that, and I got a good feedback on that, and then I was like messaging different people, and I don't know what really compelled me to do this, but I was messaging people who friends of mine who I have. One of my superpowers is being able to tell if someone hasn't put on tefillin in a while. Uh, but like messaging people who are like, they're not everyday people who put on tefillin. And I think also I think something that Chabad, I think, really does, I would say, a little bit better than I would call Litvish Judaism, I guess, for lack of a better term, is that they really separate the mitzvah of tefillin versus davening. Because I think a lot of people, whether or not you can do the whole chakras thing, which takes, 12 minutes if you're not saying the words, and, up to like 40 or more, being able to tell people like, hey, every day put on tefillin during the day, just for 5 minutes, say Shema or say bracha, and that's it. And like, that's a separate mitzvah than davening. And I think just a healthier approach, because of have the kind of be honest with yourself of like, one of the people, and I'll get to this in a second, but like, one of the people I was talking to, who's a comedian who's not super observant, he was like, what did he say? He's like, I'm a Passover Jew, a Rosh Hashanah Jew. a hate Hamas Jew, which I'm glad he added that in. But he was like, I had a bacon sandwich before we talked, and I said that it does not matter to your ability to to do this separate mitzvah. Like we kind of just are like, oh, I'm a bad Jew, all encompassing. People have this approach, and I think instead of saying, hey, look at it this way: is there anything that you can do for 5 minutes or 10 minutes in your routine to say, hey, let me connect to either my heritage or my God or just even yourself, of just like consider like meditation of some kind. And that does have nothing to do with like, hey, I'm this bad of a person otherwise. So I was messaging a bunch of people, and the response to saying to try to put it on, and I really got really positive feedback that people would say they either send pictures to me of themselves wearing it, saying, "Hey, don't post this like publicly," or like block out my name or block out my face with it, or like showing me just their arm with the tefillin on it. And like it's amazing because there's people that like somebody said I haven't done it in years. Somebody said I haven't done it since my bar mitzvah. Like somebody said 15 years they hadn't done it, and like which is pretty amazing, to be honest. Like I was really inspired by people, and then so I would just like literally post all these different. And I started posting. Then it like kind of caught on because I would post pictures of like different people like without their names or messages saying, yeah, hey, I'm in Venice. I'm trying to track down the Chabad rabbi so I can get. A guy was in Vienna. This is amazing. A guy I worked with at B&H at some point was in Vienna, and he was like, I'm going to go for a walk. And I said, do you know, is there a Chabad, a shul? So he started, it was like nighttime though. And then he's like, oh, the next day I'm leaving. He goes to the airport, he sees a guy and he borrows his tefillin. And that guy, somebody got in touch with it. Somebody knew who that guy was, which is even more impressive. And then when he got back here, I had a pair of tefillin, kind of sent to him. So the couple things that really I was encouraging people to put on tefillin who I know have but just aren't really using it potentially. And then I also was eventually through different Chabad rabbis, like Abrami Super, who's in I think St. Lucia, and a couple other people, and then the Chicago Mitzvah campaign, Rabbi Levi Libero. He's been really helpful. He had this campaign where he would, kind of say, help me get it at a little bit of a cheaper rate for people who were going to commit to doing it every day. So we were able, so we basically got sending it to people who were like, I don't have, but I'll wear it. And and then it just like kind of built so I was able to, and I was also posting, hey, I'm fundraising, and people would like message me, just say, hey, can I donate it? Can I send you money to do a pair? So my Venmo is going to be very complicated when I do my taxes, but like the point is that I think I should be better at this, keeping track of this, but I'm a comedian, so I think we got about 30 to 40 people to fill in, who didn't have, like one guy in Amsterdam who was also like, oh, it was like his father passed away, and I was like, oh, if you could like try to find a shul, a synagogue to go to maybe say Kaddish, that's also like a nice idea during the first year, and then whatever. I was just like introducing these like small things. Some of my favorite parts of one of my favorite messages I got was that somebody said to me, it said, hey, I'm putting tefillin on for the first time in God knows how long, and it's all your fault. I'm asking you this question. And he's like, how do you do the finger wrapping thing? And I realized for myself, like, it's a lot harder to teach someone how to put on tefillin from afar. Like, so I just kind of like direct them to I would direct them to like YouTube videos. It's like showing someone how to ride a bike, which you can't like really do. You just be like, all right, let me do it myself. And then, because also it's like muscle memory at this point. I'm just like, okay, here's how you do it. And there's also like Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and then there's a Sephardi or whatever, and then the Chabad way. But but also like this is like a cool story, and like I think one of the biggest things this has taught me is it's amazing that like really the Hasidic idea or the Chabad idea, like there's just like a spark in somebody who's Jewish, that there's something there that wants to connect. And like I think unfortunately it took October 7th and everything going on to really ignite that in a lot of people, that to really connect to something bigger than them. And it's something that we can't really explain. But it's been amazing to see people connected And to be able to like again, the impact is that me posting this stupid, not a stupid message, but this like simple message on Facebook and social media, which again is really powerful, like to teach you a lesson and like be careful with your words, but like also you have an impact. Is that like it like spread like wildfire, like this whole thing, and so it became a thing that I became like the Tefillin guy. Everyone, somebody said, "Do you know how many shlichim at 770 got laid off because of you? Because of what you did." And then like a friend of mine, it's got Elon Block, who does like digital artistry. He like made a profile picture of me, but like with a Chabad hat and like a beard, and people didn't recognize me even when I made my profile picture for a second. People didn't recognize it. Um, but even like I this guy who I got it for in Vienna, who was in Vienna, who I ended up getting him a pair. He directed me to somebody else who this guy, a friend of his who lost his tefillin at like a relative's wedding like 10 years ago at like a wedding hall or something like that. And he was like, I felt this like void in my soul for like 10 years. And I just got him a pair. Again, I didn't know if he was going to be an everyday guy, but he's like, um, he was like, I felt this thing, I got it. And then, but like, then I found out. So then I got a call, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or so. Somebody called me just out of the blue, and says, "Hey, you got to fill in for my son-in-law, this guy who isn't super religious, whatever, observant, whatever. Can you can you work on getting a pair? My son, who is also not as observant, wants to start putting on again. He doesn't have it anymore. Can you get him a pair?" And I'm like, so I worked on it, getting him a pair, and like, it's crazy that like again the chain reaction domino effect that you can have is really incredible with this sort of thing. And again, you take that for good or bad. So if you something bad, you can really cause damage, but also something good, you can really do a lot of good, um, in this world. The one also when I went to the rally, they had a big rally in DC, I think in November. Um, and I held up like posters, and I needed some things. So some posters were jokes and some were, so one was like put on tefillin for people who can't. And while I was leaving the rally, I saw a guy that held a poster that said, "I already put on tefillin for Israel today. Thanks for asking." And so I took a picture with that guy, and it was great. But another poster I had like was like A for Eshe team and like
Mhm.
other like silly signs, because I'm just like, all right, this is you know. But after it's interesting because after that rally, people are like, some of these Chabad guys were posting about tefillin they got on people, and or they got people to put on tefillin. I think they have like a ticker, like almost like attendance at a concert or like whatever. So they have like a ticker, how many it's like, or like McDonald's, how many burgers have been sold, you know. Um and so one guy posted, a guy who was like this black guy posted saying he like doesn't, he was like, nobody asked me about putting on tefillin. I wonder why. And then and instead of like make this whole thing, I like messaged him on Twitter and I said, "Hey, can you give me your number? Can we talk?" And I ended up having a conversation with him. Turns out he said his maternal grandmother is a Yemenite Jew, and she came into like DC area in like the 50s, and like whatever, this whole thing. And he's got two sons, and he has been going to a conservative shul in DC, borrowing his rabbis and somebody else's. So I said, okay, for his son, meaning his son, and so I got for him and his son, and it turns out his other son is like turning 13 probably next month. So I was like, we were able to get him a pair for his his second son. So yeah, I just just the cool stories that have like happened from this. Like and occasionally I would post saying, "Hey everybody, when this is all over, please hire me as a comedian at your Chabad houses." I was like, I still have a mortgage to pay, but it's been nice. Like I said, it's the same way that like hopefully a comedian can look at anything that happens and try to see the funny in it or see the positive in it. I think the same thing, that you can look at the news, and depending on your perspective, you could be jaded and cynical and depressed, and that's probably very natural to feel, oh my God, the world's like going to hell or whatever. But if you look at also like all the good that other, like I initially was thinking, especially when the first month or so, I was like, oh, God just knew that for Mashiach to come, every Jewish person just needed to do mitzvahs all the time, because there were so many people just constantly helping this effort. Whether it's the war effort, or displaced people in the South in Israel, or getting supplies for people that lost stuff, or just therapy and medical and whatever. Just like the magnitude of the amount of mitzvahs being done, and good deeds being done either around the world. And yes, or the other side of me says, yeah, when there's a lot extra evil in the world, you gotta have extra good in the world to kind of help to balance things out a little bit. So it's hard not to be, it's hard to be positive and upbeat during these times, but I think this is the kind of thing that helps.
100% agree. I think it's crazy. It teaches all of us that like one, how powerful social media can be if it's used for the right reasons, and two is how like one simple thing or one thought could change so many people's lives. I mean, let's say someone doesn't have such a big social media presence, just like smiling on the street or saying like, "Hi, how are you?" or I don't know, showing people what your values are could change their lives. And I think you're the perfect example of that. How, one small tweet impacted 35 people directly, giving them pairs of tefillin. Can't imagine how many people started putting on, again. So it's unbelievable. I just think teaches all of us that, do that one small thing, even if you think it's not normal, whatever. Like, no, like go forwards, go do it, because the impact can be so vast.
Yeah, and I think kind of what I was saying about the the Chabad approach, which is like, okay, just do this one mitzvah. Like, even if the rest of your day is not spiritual, or is not even devoted to Judaism or whatever, like, do what you can, and maybe who knows what that'll lead to. Um, I don't know if this is a Gemara or just one of these like stories from the rabbis that I think it's a Gemara. They said going to a town that, like, this rabbi said there's like this guy, they got I heard a voice that said like, this person's going to heaven, and he's like, what do you do? And then he's like, I got to meet this guy. And then he's like, all right. So he's like, this guy's just a regular guy. What's his deal? It's like, oh, he's like, my parents are very elderly and very like handicapped or whatever. They're basically bedridden, or essentially just they can't function on their own. He's like, so every day, like, I get them dressed, and I like feed them, bathe them, and all that stuff. And just like based on that, just like him taking kibbud of aim, that doing it that well, that was enough for him to like warrant, you know, um, going to heaven. That like, these small acts that you don't know what you can do, that you don't know what you can do to help someone. And whether that's like, again, think about someone. I also would something I try to do if like somebody loses a parent. I lost my mother when I was 17, so like, almost about 18 years ago. And I try to be mindful of like, when either making a shiva call if I can, or calling someone who was lost, and like speaking to them or messaging them and being like, hey, you're not in this alone, and like, I'm always here to talk if you want to. And like, I think these things, like, people remember that, and it's just bring good into the world a little bit if you can.
Makes sense. Well, thank you so much, Ellie. It's been a
Sure.
pleasure. Look forward to hopefully having amazing feedback from this podcast and inspiring more and more people throughout the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You have just listened to Wrapped, brought to you by the Tefillin Project. Stay tuned for more episodes featuring the most inspiring people involved in the mitzvah of Tefillin. Keep rapping.